For the benefit of our viewers, if you could tell us briefly about what exactly is a bass guitar, why does it have just four strings, what is the role a bass guitarist plays,
Okay.
not only on stage but in a song.
Okay. Uh, it's a in-depth question. Bass is, first of all, to understand it without the instrument, is bass is basically a frequency. So if you looked at any kind of frequency and you see like an EQ, an equalizer, which everyone has in their home theater systems and everything, you'll notice that they always have this bass, mid, treble, right? So it's in a frequency range, first of all. So in the bass range, there are a lot of instruments that can give you that bass frequency. It can come from many instruments, not just the bass guitar.
Okay.
It comes from drums, it comes from piano, it comes from guitar, it can come from a harp, it can come from any violin, it can come from any instrument.
Any sound source.
Any sound source. Okay, and it's a frequency. So just like that, there are instruments in those frequencies. So you can even have voice, for example, which is baritone, which is called, and that's the bass frequency.
Right.
So the bass, first of all, you have to understand, is a frequency. It's a place where the music sounds like that, or the sound is of a certain type. Now the bass guitar is basically an instrument designed to give that frequency specifically. So to get that frequency, the strings of a bass guitar are thicker.
All four strings.
All four strings are much thicker than a normal guitar, because the thickness of the strings can define the frequency that it generates. So it gives a much deeper tone from the guitar by just having thicker strings. So with time, the original bass instrument used to be the upright bass, or the full size upright bass, which you've seen, which kind of looks like a cello or a violin, but a very large one. So that was one of the first instruments that came out of a design it came out of Africa, of people playing the different types that they made before, and usually it used to have just one string, and they would play it with just one string, and it would define many notes on that one string. It eventually got evolved and got two strings, and then the European culture came into play, and then they have the upright bass, and that had usually three strings before. So upright basses used to have three strings. So that increased eventually to four strings, and later was designed into an electric bass. I forgot the name right now; it's on top of my brain. But the invention of the electric bass came out, where they took the concept of this entire big instrument and turned it into a smaller size instrument, actually, comparatively to the upright bass, following the guitar specifications, basically. So they made it a little smaller, but to get that tonality and to get that tuning, it couldn't be as small as the guitar at that time. So it has a longer scale, so it's a longer fretboard, basically. So the body is bigger to define that sound, and they put pickups, like how they have in electric guitars. They put pickups to generate a magnetic field to get the sound out. And then the history of bass has changed, from players. I mean, how each player has used that instrument since its upright bass times till the electric bass times. And not to say that the upright bass has gone out of fashion. It's completely in, and today still played, and it's beautiful. But it has evolved in many ways. And even the electric bass has now evolved into other types of instruments, and now they have even a piccolo bass, or small, this VU basses, So I mean, it's all evolving as to how you can get that bass frequency, or so much so that now you can even get it on a keyboard and it can be programmed, right? But the electric bass has again predominantly come out from African music into American culture and European culture, and uh, I would say, rock and roll bands from UK became a very strong definition of bass and bass being used in music. So, like to name a few famous ones, like the Beatles, with Paul McCartney playing bass, and you would hear bass lines. So there are bass lines basically played in music. Now, if you hear music in general, or if you like your home theater system, if you had to just knock out all the bass from that home theater system, it doesn't sound that great anymore. You know,
There's no body to
there's
it.
no body to it, and there's no warmth to it, and everybody goes like something is wrong. You start to feel like something is wrong, or some speaker is not connected properly, right? Immediately. And then you realize that, oh, there's a subwoofer over there, what does that do? And then you connect that up, and then you say, oh, it's sounding much better. But then you realize that in the EQ, oh, you cut out all the bass. So when you put it back in, yeah, the music sounds great. So it's basically that frequency. That means music should have that spectrum of all frequencies to sound beautiful, I think. So I mean, it's just not the bass, it's other frequencies as well. So if you just had the bass and it was just low ended, and you don't have these other frequencies, the highs and the mids, again the music will not sound great and it sounds incomplete, right? So now the bass, if you talk about it, it's an instrument that for me is like this bridge between the rhythm and the whole melodic department. So you have the drummer, you have a piano player, you have a guitar player, or you have a singer, and they are the ones singing or playing the harmonic section, or the main melodies, basically the melodic section. So they're playing the top melodies, and then you have either guitar or piano playing the harmonies behind. But what connects the root notes of those harmonies and those melodies is the bass note. So till the bass note doesn't really come in, it's very hard to define what those harmonies are. Because you're hearing different chords or things happen, but it's the bass note, which is the root note, which plays the root note of the chord, that actually defines which chord is being played. And that's when your mind actually locks in and says, okay, that's the chord. Now the bass doesn't only play the melodic part of it, it also plays a rhythmic part of it. So if the drummer is playing a groove, the bass player plays that root note with a rhythm. So when he plays that root note with the rhythm and a rhythmic pattern, that's when it defines that section of the music. So it connects basically the whole rhythm section to the melodic section. So now it's become really a bridge where it's connecting its play, because it's playing the rhythm and it's playing the harmonic parts as well. So that actually joins, and it's like the binder of the music. And if you take out that, the whole thing can just crumble. It just falls apart. Or these two will not be able to communicate. That whole signal is lost basically.
Is why the chemistry between the drummer and the bass player very important?
It is the chemistry between the drummer, bass player, and the bass player and the melodic section. It's like that, and that will form the triangle.
That's why the bridge.
That's why the bridge. The communicate. We are actually like that radio signal basically. So you might have a great tar which is giving you the signal, and you might have a great smartphone, but till that signal is not there, it's useless. There's no connection. Your phone is useless, and that tower is useless. It doesn't matter which network company is there, and they're doing great, but if there's no signal, there's nothing. So the bass is like that. It just connects everything out, and it can it makes everything else sound good, by just being there. And it depends on music. It depends on how it's placed, how it's used, and it depends. I don't say, I'm not into that less is more concept, to be very honest. It depends on how you look at music, and more can be more, less can be less.
Right.
So, but how you place those bass notes and how do you use them, how do you rhythmically use the bass, is what makes the music sound amazing. So that's a study, and that's when you think about music as a whole rather than bass. So whenever I talk about bass, also I like to talk about suppose when people call me to play bass or they want me to record a song, I'm always like thinking about it musically. I'm not thinking about it that, oh, I'm the bass player and I have to play bass, so let me like vomit on this tune, you know.
Okay.
I don't do that. Sometimes I feel like maybe, this part doesn't require bass. Like, I mean, just this empty space over here sounds nice, just let it float, you know and let it float, and then let the bass come in here. And when the bass comes in there, it kicks in, right? That's how it elevates the music. If you play it continuously and you're continuously loud or you're continuously all over the place, then you're kind of going to lose the essence of it. You're going to lose the beauty of it, and too much of anything can also then become monotonous. So there has to be dynamic range. There has to be an in and out of that thing. So that's how I look at bass. And so it's a very fundamental sound instrument. And yeah, it comes, like I said, it comes from other instruments. So even the piano player, I mean, imagine he was just playing only right hand and didn't play his left hand. The left hand is playing the bass part. So when he comes in with the left hand, that's when it completes the sound. Or when the drummer's playing, if he didn't play his kick drum and he's just playing only on top, you'll feel something missing. And the moment he plays the kick drum in it, that's when you say, oh, now it's full. Now it's completely there. So each instrument has the bass. So it's already in all those instruments, and it's very important. And so when bass players have to learn to lock with the drums, and follow the bass patterns, so that everybody plays together rather than on top of each other, or just trying to, it can sometimes clash. So it's very, you have to understand and study it as to how the bass notes fit perfectly with the harmonic section and complement the rhythm section, and then create the sound of bass. Now the bass is such a glue that's very possible. It's very possible that when the whole music starts, people can't even recognize it's there. But usually that's also an amazing thing. That's when the bass is beautiful. That means it has actually blended or created a smooth transition between everything. That it's not like popping out too much and hitting you too much. Again, it's subjective to the music. I mean, like jazz, it can pop out more. It can have more notes. Pop maybe not so much. It depends. It depends on the music. So I won't say that it's only this way or that way. But when it blends beautifully, sometimes it can become very tough to even hear the bass. That's what's happening in India. That people and they've never heard it before, because again, this instrument is coming out from the West. It has not existed in Indian music culture, so they don't understand what that sound is. Though that bass frequency is in a lot of instruments, like you have it in the baya and tabla. Okay, you have in sitar strings, there are the low section of the sitar. So these are instruments that have bass naturally.
Yeah.
But they don't understand the difference. Like they just look at it as sitar, or they just look at it as tabla. But yeah, there are two sections of those instruments. So when a bass player is playing with these instruments, now they don't understand that this is filling up a certain frequency, and then the sitar player, for example, can play a certain frequency, and the bass player plays the other frequency, which is the low frequency, and then together is what builds up that entire frequency and spectrum, like we spoke about. And that sounds great. So people are not accustomed right now to hearing it.
The listeners.
Yeah, the listeners are still not there yet with understanding it, and but it's all right. It's if they enjoyed the entire music, actually it's a compliment to the bass player, because that means the bass player's done his job well. If everybody sounds good on stage, that's the bass player's job, actually, to make everybody sound good. And that's the prime focus. Then a bass player can get a solo, and he can showboat and do what he has to do, and that's cool also, because everybody deserves a little of a spotlight, and it's cool,
And you do have a special technique.
I love experimenting with music as much. Yeah, I love experimenting with music as much as I can, and I don't yeah, I play bass guitar, but I think music. So if I think music, why shouldn't I think of all the ways to make music? So, a lot of people used to be like, you don't need six-string bass. Why are you playing six-string bass? You can, four-string is great and that's enough, and how many guys have done enough? I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm not doing it because I'm trying to say that is not enough. I play six-string bass because I love guitar too. I love guitar, and like I said earlier also, I used to play guitar and bass simultaneously. So I love guitar, so I love playing chords and I love that frequency. And for me, I want to be able to have the palette rather available to play whatever that frequency is. Because just because I'm a bass player doesn't mean anything I play should be in the bass frequency. Some things sound good in an upper register, something good sound in the mid register, and something sound good in the lower register. So if I have a palette available to choose from, why not? Right? I mean, as long as I'm not overstepping somebody who's playing that frequency already. So if there's a guitar player and he's already playing that frequency, then maybe I don't need to play that frequency. So if I did that, then that's just bad choice. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have that frequency available to you. Right? So that's how I look at it. And so I have that frequency. So when I need to play the bass parts, I'm grounding the low end, and I'm there with that. And yeah, when I do get a little space to express what I have to say, then I might choose any frequency. So there might be a night where I might only want to choose in the lower register and I play only the low notes. Or there might be a time where I want to play just out in the upper register and sound like a guitar player. Maybe. But that is my interpretation of what I want to say that night at that gig. And I should have that opportunity. I feel like, yeah, maybe I would like to say it in a particular way. I like playing more melodic and I like playing those things as well. Then also, the bass is a very rhythmic instrument also. There's so many techniques like slap bass and, popping and all these rhythmic techniques that can be applied to the bass. So I just started applying these things.
So this is decided by the composer, or you?
In your solo, it's not. It's completely yours. What you want to do in your solo. I mean, that's how it should be. Like, if you're given a solo, you gotta, you bring it out. Whatever you want to say, you say. What can be decided by a composer is probably what's to be played in the music, provided that being his composition. If it's his composition and he has a composition says, this is my song and I want you to play bass on it. Yeah, then cool, he can tell me, I would like you to play this bass line or I would like you to play these notes. That's cool. But if he brings an idea and says, you come up with something, then I can choose what I want to do again. So I can choose if I want to groove, I want to slap, I want to just play some chords, I want to play, or that's a choice thing. So that's again based on choice and musical taste. So yeah, so that's how I love looking at bass as a music generator, not just something that, just because it's called bass you gotta get stuck in a register. No, it's not like that. Like, it's not, you can't tell a piano player only play in that register or only play this, or you can play anything. Today keyboards are designed to play any other instrument also, right? They have all kinds of sounds. So
no,
it's happening.
You've explained the whole concept very beautifully, and
yeah, because I believe in that.